Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more title update 4. We're back again to talk more Charge Blade after the Arch-Tempered Jin update. It was an impactful update for all kinds of builds. You know, there's the chest piece with the slots and the agitator levels, there's the legs with weakness exploit, but there's also the coalescence gloves for element focused sets such as Charge Blade. And importantly, in this build update, it's clear that with the element cap increase and the incredible element levels Charge Blade can reach, it outdoes the classic Raw with a bit of element matching as a concept. So heavy investment for element with Charge Blade is really rewarded. Really, that's the core focus, and then it's up to you. Are you going to be choosing a axe focus playstyle, which most people will do? Or do you really enjoy SAED, where these builds are going to work great? Normally you'd need a different setup for an axe focus and a different build say for SAED, but now it's about preference in the moment. For example, SAED is best used against your monsters like gogmazios, but importantly Gog during phase 3, not just when it's weakened. Look at the massive hits that we're actually doing while it's active, and then even more of course when it's extra vulnerable to that dragon. Dropping heavy SAEDs always feels good, and so in these builds you'll be able to do that, but it's obviously most relevant against targets that are going to be particularly weak to that, which for us in the current meta is phase 3 Gog. There is one note to think about though, where this is not going to be the case: arkveld, so that'll be important for the Arch-Tempered version in February, as we'll soon cover. Before we get into it, quick thank you and shout out to Josh for his work on the builds today, working out your say Gogma Artian rolls, the set bonuses, comparing the math, ultimately deciding these builds. And continued thank you to the data miner for the RNG Talisman system we still rely on, detail null. With that said, let's begin. Let's begin with your element focus crafts and Gogma Artian setups. As before, you will be going for an element focus craft when you're actually going from Artian to Gogma, of course. So you'll start with 205 attack, you'll have 0% affinity, and your element. In regards to your active skills, only the first set bonus really matters here, which is Gogma's set for that element bonus. So in these sets, we're going to see a lot of mutual hostility level 2, which means you get this really relevant damage barrier. Otherwise, for the upgrades, the reinforces, like before, 2 EX on element boost, 2 levels of element boost level 2, and finally your 1 line of sharpness in EX. Things are interesting when it comes to the decorations though, because we have decorations if you're looking to SAED, we have decorations if you're looking for Savage Axe, which most of us will be. So for most of us, that'll be the element of the correct type, so fire for this fire weapon with a bonus level of handicraft. Then you've got power prolonger and 1 level of handicraft, and lastly rapid morph with 1 level handicraft. That's what you'll do for your Savage Axe gameplay. But if you're planning on using SAED, a slight change is definitely worth it. And so for my dragon weapon when I'm dealing with Gog, that's definitely something I'm doing. In this case, you'll be going for the element 3 as before, but on the back of that we'll have guard up. Instead of power prolonger, we have focus, so we're able to generate those vials as fast as possible and spam SAEDs more often. Off the back of that, you can have handicraft or another level of guard up. And lastly, we have rapid morph, and that final level of handicraft if you have it. I don't, so I just have guard, but ideally it'd be 2 guard up and 1 handicraft as the bonus skills. Where's the load shells, which obviously you want? You'll find it on the talismans, as we'll cover in all the builds. But in the rare scenario where you don't have the RNG talisman of load shells, then yes, you'll have to decorate for load shells, in which case we'll drop power prolonger for the Savage Axe focus, and for the SAED focus, we'll drop rapid morph. We'll begin with the minimal RNG version, so no RNG talisman and no required active skill roll on your Gogma Artian. This is the closest entry point then. With that in mind, we will be using a crafted talisman. We're going for the counter charm for 3 levels of counter strike. This does mean you don't have load shells on your talisman like we just highlighted. So if you're going for an axe focus like most people will, you'll lose power prolonger for the load shells offensive decoration. If you were thinking about SAED, well, in the example of that, we would lose rapid morph and gain load shells there as the offensive decoration. Only really matters for this set, but obviously I have to highlight it. Anyway, for the equipment, you have Gog Helm in Alpha, you have Mizu Beta Chest, you have Gog Gloves in Alpha, you have Gog Waist in Beta, specifically Waist in Beta for the other part of Bubbly Dance to get that set bonus working. It is obviously important. Then you have the Gog Boots in Alpha, and again the counter charm. With these decorations, you achieve this skill list. Take a look if you want to, pause it if you need to. Here's the next page, and that's the last page, nothing important. Here's a highlight of the math. For the raw, we have 205 base raw, increased by these sources to 261. Multiply that by the white sharpness, and you get to 344.52. You have very little affinity, 35% from these sources, no crit boost as it doesn't massively matter. So that's a 25% damage increase 35% of the time, bringing it to 375 effective raw, which is obviously very low, but this is all about the element. So we start with 630 base element. This is multiplied by these sources, including Gog 4, getting you to 1277.6. On top of that, you have these flat sources like Burst 5, Gog 4, getting you to 1567.6 in theory, but the reality is the element cap is 1448, so you're over capping. Let's debloat the LE cap then and get us down to 144.9 as your true element with SAED. But while you're using Savage Axe attacks, obviously we can multiply that by the white sharpness for the real effective element for that, which is 167. So these are ridiculous numbers, but that math assumes all the element skills are always up, which is definitely not realistic. But many of them will be getting you close to cap, and maybe in the rare scenario where you do overcap, your SADs are going to be hitting like a truck. To enhance this with an RNG Talisman, you can't really do a lot, so don't really worry about this. But yes, you would re-equip a load shells talisman like this one with the 2 levels of load shells, and then a secondary skill that's got relevance like 2 levels of max might that you'd normally decorate for, and then a 2 and a 1 slots possible as well. With that, you'd be able to rework your offensive decorations with rapid morph back in place of the load shells and power prolonger like we mentioned. If you have something like this, you get the benefits of a few more offensive skills. That's the change. But for the real juice, we're going to go into the RNG with the weapon and the talisman and maximize. This is what that's going to look like. But the important thing here is your active skills, getting the Gogma set bonus here. The second line, the group skills, actually not relevant. We can't activate anything. Then for the RNG talisman, it's what we're highlighting. The load shells talisman with a second skill that matters. This is maximum might for me, but it could be counter strike level 2 for you. But at least a 2 slot for your decoration. You can also get a bonus 1 slot though. If we're going to get rid of this RNG talisman for a crafted one, you go for something like Mighty or Counter Charm 3. And do the whole swap over for your offensive decorations again. For the equipment then, we have Gog Helm in Alpha, the Mizu chest in Beta, make sure it's transcended, the Jin Dahaad gloves with their incredible coalescence and weakness exploit, the Gog waist in Beta, and lastly the Gog boots in Alpha. The Gog waist in Beta is important for Mizu to activate Bubbly Dance. Here's the decoration slots that we use to achieve this skill list. So here's a look at the first page, here's a look at the second page, and the next page, and then the final page, which shouldn't be relevant, yeah. So pause that wherever you need to. But here's a quick overview of the math to show you how good this is. 205 base raw, increased by these flat sources to 256, multiplied by the white sharpness, and you get to 337.92, with 47% reliable affinity from these sources, but no crit boost. That's a 25% damage increase 47% of the time, multiply that by a last number, and you get to the pretty low 378 effective raw. But again, the element's the main thing here. So 630 base element, multiplied from these sources including Gog 4, getting us to 1277.6. Then we have these flat sources, getting us to 1567.6, which again is over the LE cap. So the truth is you'll never go above 1449. So let's take that and debloat it to the true element of 144.9. So that'll be that when you're getting the SADs off, but we can still multiply it by a white sharpness for your Savage Axe attacks, bringing you to 167 effective element. Pretty incredible stuff. Here's a couple things we need to at least mention. If you were just doing SAD slams and nothing else, then yeah, weakness exploit, affinity don't really matter. You can actually take the 2 slots we're using for weakness exploit and put in something else like earplugs in your decorations. Then you don't have to deal with the raws for SAD spam, which is nice. You also might be wondering about Mizu 2 set instead of something like Gore 2 set. Because of this, we're triggering the coalescence 3 times as much as if we were using Gore 2. So that's why we're leaning on that rather than the Gore version, which would have 4 more effective raw, but just having way more reliable coalescence uptime matters more. So that's why we do that. Now finally, a quick overview of your raw builds. This should be considered a secondary choice and overall a worse option compared to your element sets we just looked at and matching element for the weaknesses. But obviously we want to give you this option if you don't want to element match, just want to get straight into Charge Blade against whatever target. Obviously we're mentioning arkveld and that'll be a thing, and by no means is it like terrible anyway. For this setup then, you'll need to consider a different Gogma Artian. So you'll be crafting it with an attack focus, which will result in say that minus 10% affinity but higher roll. With the rolls, you'll be doing attack boost EX times 2, attack boost 3 times 2, and then the sharpness roll with EX. We'll talk about the active skills for the full RNG set. But for your offensive decorations, as before, it is 2 slots to crit boost to get you at 5 out of 5, and the remaining slot for load shells and a bonus level of handicraft for sharpness. Right, starting with the no RNG set, which means crafted talisman, and it doesn't require the active skill RNG of the Gogma weapon. For the set then, we are using Guardian Ebony Helmet in beta, make sure it's transcended for the slots, the new Udra chest in gamma, the Guardian Ebony gloves in beta, again make sure it's transcended for the gloves, this gives you burst boost as a set bonus. We have Raydao Gamma Waist and the new Jin Dahaad legs in Gamma. For the talisman, we go for the Power Charm, which is 3 levels of latent power. And then with these very simple decorations, we achieve this skill list. So that's the skill list. But then we see for set bonuses, Burst Boost 1, and on the last page, Guts Tenacity. Anyway, quick overview of the math to show this. 257 base raw, multiply by 5% from Guts Tenacity, getting you to 269.85. Increase it with these flat sources to bring us to 317.85. Multiply that by the white sharpness, and you get to 419.56. We have 85% reliable affinity, which is very solid, from these sources. Then 5 crit boost, so that's a 40% damage increase, 85% of the time from the affinity. Multiply that by a last number then, and that gets you to 562 effective raw for a no RNG set. Compared to last time, you've gained 9 effective raw, and we have like 2 more levels of burst compared to before. If you want to invest a higher tier talisman into the set then, you take out this latent 3 and go for something like this. 3 levels of attack boost, the offensive slot to the 4th level attack boost, and then a secondary skill that you would decorate for. So that will be either weakness exploit like this one, or say 1 latent power. And then just rejig the decorations where needed to get the same skill list. Overall, by doing this, you would lose at least 1 level of latent power and 1 agitator, but you would actually gain the 4 attack. So definitely nice. But if you are getting into RNG like this, it's better to go with like the proper set, the Max DPS set, so let's cover that. But lastly, we have of course the Max DPS set for Raw, which will require RNG on your Gogma rolls and the talisman, like God rolls. But it gives you the peak to aim for, so let's take a look. You will require, as many sets do, God Magala's Tyranny for your active skill set bonus, and Lord Soul for the group skill bonus. The other heavy RNG part is of course the talisman. Here we have 3 attack boost and 1 offensive slot going to the next level of attack to get you to 4 levels for the percent bonus. Then we have a bonus skill of relevance, in this case weakness exploit, and 2 1 slots on top of that. This is important because it allows for antivirus 3 out of 3. It is required to have those extra 1 slots, so yeah, God roll situation. If you do not have a God roll set up like this, then going for the previous Max DPS set we did in Title Update 4, that's one to check out. For the equipment then, we have Guardian Ebony Helmet in beta, make sure it's transcended for the slots, the new Jin Dahaad chest piece in gamma, the Guardian Ebony gloves again in beta for the second part of burst boost, again make sure that's transcended for the slots, the gore waist in beta, and again a new piece, Jin Dahaad's legs, the gamma piece. Pretty cool then that we're able to update with some new equipment in this update. But here's the decoration slots to achieve this skill list. Here's the first page, here's the next page, and then the last page, pause where necessary. Quick overview of the math then. We have 257 base raw, times by 7 thanks to guts and of course attack 4 to 274.99. Then we increase it by these flat sources to 332.99. Multiply that by 32% from white sharpness, that gets you to 439.54. Then we have 78% reliable affinity from these sources. We will have 5 crit boost in the setup, so that's a 40% damage increase 78% of the time from the affinity. Multiply that by a last number, and you get to the very solid 577 effective raw. So, some interesting stuff about this set then. There's a gain of 7 effective raw over the previous one, so it's a big deal, but there is this other aspect to it. I did say we're using 2 pieces of Jin set. This gives you binding counter, and as you can read, it increases your attack after recovering from web status, frostbite, being pinned, or a power clash. So that's 25 raw for 90 seconds, which lasts longer after they buff that length in Title Update 4. So the fact that this comes after a clash, which is reliably possible, with of course the guarding of Charge Blade, is great. And then less reliable the other sources, like being webbed or being, frozen. Any matchup where you can get CC'd in that way on top of the clashes, it'll happen often enough, and you will feel it because it's 25 extra raw. So between that and the effective raw increase, this is a big step forward for the max DPS version of raw. Good to see. But yeah, that about covers it for Charge Blade, the update for Title Update 4, and of course specifically the AT update for Jin Dahaad. Quite a lot to cover and think about with this update compared to a lot of weapons. So I hope this was appreciated. If it was, do drop a like. And we'll see if they'd make changes to the weapons or any of the content of the game before the arkveld update. But of course, we'll be back for that. But until then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.